This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so the next class of beta-lactam antibiotics after penicillins, which contains the typical beta-lactam ring, is that of cephalosporins, and you can see on your screen the structural differences that exist between penicillins and cephalosporins. The main structural difference is the presence of or the replacement of the five-membered ring system of thiazolidine ring in the penicillin. It has been replaced in cephalosporins by the dihydrothiazine ring system. Okay, so this is the major difference in the structure. That is, a five-membered ring system containing sulfur group is being replaced in cephalosporins with a six-membered ring system. And the advantages of or the advantage of replacing such a such a ring or doing such a replacement is mainly to improvise on the activity. The spectrum of activity increases. There is activity against both gram positive as well as gram negative bacteria, and these cephalosporins are less allergic as compared to penicillins. I quoted a point last time that if you would get a job in an industry where penicillin manufacturing is going on, in that case there would be um, a checkup that would be done of yours to see if you would get an anaphylactic attack or are you allergic to penicillin. Okay, they are also more stable in the acidic medium as compared to penicillin, and you know that the drugs or anything that we consume has to undergo a first pass metabolism. They have to enter the acidic medium of the stomach. So obviously a preferred trait that is there in this cephalosporin antibiotics, and they are non-toxic as compared to penicillin antibiotics. Now, these cephalosporin antibiotics were obtained from the Cephalosporium species, how penicillin was obtained from the Penicillium notatum. So again, this also is a microbial metabolic substance which is being used in the treatment of diseases to combat different infectious diseases caused by different microorganisms. And they have a typical 4,6 bicyclic structure, or they are called as 4,6 bicyclic analogs, and they are stable to the penicillinase enzyme as well. So this also becomes another advantage, that they are stable to the penicillinase enzyme. And based on their spectrum of activity, they have been classified into first generation, second generation, third generation, and fourth generation cephalosporin antibiotics. So these are some of the disadvantages and advantages of cephalosporin antibiotics: resistance to penicillinase enzyme, good activity against gram positive and gram negative bacteria, non-toxic, less allergic, stable in acidic medium. I have mentioned all this. Plus, there are a few disadvantages also of doing this replacement. A bit lower in potency, and oral absorption is less, and difficult to get a pure cephalosporin compound. So these are some of the advantages and disadvantages of the cephalosporin antibiotics. We move on to the SAR of the cephalosporin antibiotics. You can see the structure on your screen. Here is the beta-lactam ring system. Okay, and to this beta-lactam ring system is fused the dihydrothiazine ring system, a six-membered ring system containing sulfur. And then there are different substitutions that are happening on this particular 4,6 bicyclic analog. This is the 4,6 bicyclic analog. Okay, so as you are listening to the didactic lecture, also start making note of all the SAR points that you can see on the screen. Now, when you start numbering from here. Okay, this R1, R2, R3 is the other alkyl or usually aryl substituents. Three different aryl substituents that you all can have. That is why it is R1, R2, and R3. The numbering isn't starting from here, it is starting from here, from the sulfur. So when you note down this ring, you draw this 4,6 bicyclic analog, you start numbering from here. Sulfur is 1, this is position 2. At R2 you will have position R3, 3. At this carboxylic juncture you will have position 4. This nitrogen will be 5. Here this hydrogen will be 6. This carbon CH bond, it will be 6 over here. 7, 8, and then we are done. Okay, so this is how the numbering happens. So the first point for your SAR obviously is beta lactam ring is essential for activity. Okay, this beta lactam ring has to be present for having good antibiotic activity, or to in the first place have an activity itself. The carboxyl group at position 4 is essential for prodrug formation. So this is the carboxyl group which is present at position 4. We will be seeing a small topic of prodrugs in our syllabus as well in the coming classes. So when a drug has to be formulated, most of the times it is converted into a prodrug and it is formulated so that it can be administered easily, and then it can break down into its actual chemical analog and exert its antibiotic structure. So if you want to convert the cephalosporin into a prodrug, then this carboxylic acid group is very essential for activity. Presence of acidic group at the third position will impart metabolically unstable compound. So here you have carboxylic acid, and then again you have an acidic group over here at this R2. So this R2 preferably will never be an acidic group. If it is an acidic group, you will have a chemically unstable compound. Okay. Then the next is cis stereochemistry is essential for activity. We are referring to this part of the cephalosporin molecule where it is desired that this has a cis stereochemistry. If this R3 would be down and it would become a trans, then the activity, the antibiotic activity of the compound would be lost. Presence of thiotetrazole group at the third position. This is the third position again. Okay, and if you have a thiotetrazole group at this position, it would not have any effect on the spectrum of activity. Means it's not as if adding a thiotetrazole group would enhance the spectrum of activity of the cephalosporin compounds. Okay, then the last point that we could note down is that when you would substitute a NH2 group or a OCHO group or a OH group at this third position, you would get a series of first generation and second generation cephalosporin compounds, and they would have good gram positive as well as gram negative antibacterial activity. Okay, so this was all about position 3. A lot many points came on position 3. You cannot have an acidic group, you cannot have a thiotetrazole group, and if you would want to generate first generation and second generation cephalosporin compounds, then you could substitute over here NH2OH or OCHO group. Okay, then we move on to another position where you could have substitution, and that position is this carbon 8, a C double bond O, which is existing over here, and it is very desired that this carbonyl group exists so that the compound remains stable. In fact, if there is no carbonyl group present at this position number 8, then it will be a unstable compound. It will be prone for a nucleophilic or a electrophilic attack. Okay, then we come to this position 7. At position number 7, you could have different substitutions, and With the help of different substitutions, you could generate an array of cephalosporin compounds, which would give good antibacterial activity. And it also helps, or it affects the binding of the beta lactamase. You could have a lot of semi-synthetic compounds coming in if you would have substitutions at this 7th position. Okay, so this is all about the SAR of cephalosporin antibiotics. So like I told you, depending on the spectrum of activity, the different drugs were classified, and of course based on their discovery also. So the first generation drugs of cephalosporins were discovered way back in 1960, and some of the examples of this class of first generation cephalosporins is cephalothin, cephalexin, cefadroxil, cefazolin, and you see that they have a wide range of activity, right from being active against streptococci, staphylococci, E. coli, and Klebsiella. They have then even the diphtheria, the meningococci, gonococci, they have a wide spectrum of activity. From here, we moved on to cefuroxime, very commonly used cephalosporin. In fact, even in the first generation, cephalexin and cefadroxil are very commonly used antibiotics, and especially when urinary tract infections have to be treated, you could use cephalexin or cefadroxil in combination with other anti-UTI drugs to combat the infection, especially when you don't know whether the infection has been caused by a gram-positive bacteria or a gram-negative bacteria. Cefuroxime is also a widely used cephalosporin antibiotic, and its most important use is in the treatment of meningitis. The third generation cephalosporin, again they have a better or a broader spectrum of activity, being active against the gram negative enterobacteriaceae microorganisms, and they give and in this generation what you have is the cefotaxime. Okay, Taxim or Taximo or Otaxim is a very commonly used cephalosporin. In fact, even as a first line of treatment in milder or moderate cases of COVID, also Taximo has been prescribed by several physicians just to keep in check. Okay, it is actually an antibacterial agent, but it has been used as an antiviral agent also in the treatment of COVID. We need to wait and watch how much is it going to be useful to combat the infection. Okay, then in the same generation of third, we have the other famous, very commonly used cephalosporin antibiotics, ceftriaxone, cefixime. They are also used very commonly in the treatment of urinary tract infections, respiratory tract infections, which are caused by streptopyogens, pseudomonas, staphylococci, and even in the treatment of bacterial meningitis. In burn wounds, we have a separate class of sulfonamide antibiotics or sulfonamide drugs, which are commonly used or very famously used in the treatment of burn wounds. Along with those, you can use ceftazidime. It is available many times as an ointment to treat burn wounds. We come now to the fourth generation of cephalosporin antibiotics. The very famous examples of this class are cefepime and cefepirone, and this you would come to use a fourth generation cephalosporin only when you have not shown any activity against the first three generations. Now you know that developing antibiotic resistance is very common, and many a times an infection which is called as hospital acquired infection okay, where there is development of pneumonia and septicemia in patients who are confined into the hospital stay for a very long period of time, they stop responding to different other cephalosporin antibiotics of the first three generations. In those cases, you could use these fourth generation compounds. Okay, what you see on your screen are a few examples of the cephalosporin antibiotics, some structures that I have given. I I think you should note them down. We could write a few things about them. Okay, you can take down the structure of cephalaxin. And we could write a few lines about these drugs. We have already finished the SAR. Cephalaxin is an orally active antibiotic It is a first generation cephalosporin which has an alpha amino group. Which makes it an acid stable antibiotic. It has an alpha amino group which makes it an acid stable antibiotic. I think you should underline this. You could have an MCQ asking you what is the reason that an cephalaxin is an acid stable antibiotic, because it has this alpha amino group. It has optimal activity against gram-positive bacteria. It has optimal activity against gram-positive bacteria. And moderate activity against gram-negative bacteria. And moderate activity against gram-negative bacteria. It is used against urinary tract infections. It is used against urinary tract infections. Next example is cephalochlor. It is a second generation cephalosporin antibiotic. Which is used to treat infections such as pneumonia, which is used to treat infections such as pneumonia and infections of the ear and infections of the ear, lungs, skin, and throat. The next example is cefixime. This antibiotic is used to treat ear infections, pneumonia, gonorrhea, GONORRHEA, gonorrhea. It's a sexual disorder or a STD, sexually transmitted disorder. And urinary tract infections. Okay, so these were some examples. Of course, there are many examples that belong to the different classes. So cephalaxin is a first generation cephalosporin. Cefaclor is a second generation cephalosporin. Cefixime is a third generation cephalosporin. I have not given you a fourth generation cephalosporin. You could probably just note down cefepirone. You could add to your notes about the uses of cefepirone. In fact, I've already briefed you on it. Hospital acquired infections like septicemia, it is used. Septicemia as well as pneumonia, hospital acquired pneumonia. So you could add that. In third generation, you could also add another example of cefitoxim. Okay. So in that also make the note of the structure and the uses or the salient features of that particular antibiotic. The best book that you could use for cephalosporin antibiotics is Wilson Giswold. Okay, so this is all about beta-lactam antibiotics. We saw penicillins, we saw cephalosporins, and we saw also about beta-lactamase inhibitors also, like clavulanic acid, which is used in coordination or in conjugation with the penicillin antibiotics. We next move on to what are called as aminoglycoside antibiotics. Okay, now these aminoglycoside antibiotics are also semi-synthetic antibiotics and natural antibiotics. So obviously the first they were discovered were the natural antibiotics, and this also was obtained from different types of microorganisms only. The metabolic byproducts of different microorganisms gave rise to aminoglycoside antibiotics, and they have a very typical structure where they have a polybasic amino group and they are linked glycosidically to amino sugars. That is why they have this name, aminoglycosides, which means that there is an amino group containing structure and there is a glycoside ring system, and they both are linked to each other to form the entire structure of aminoglycosides. And they were obtained from the, like I said, they are obtained from microorganisms. So they are obtained from the Streptomyces species, and they however are not effective on anaerobic microorganisms because they are not able to penetrate through um, the channel or the walls of these particular type of microorganisms. So they are not effective on infections which are caused by anaerobic microorganisms. Okay, and we'll come to see some examples of aminoglycosides. So very easy structures you can see on your screen of streptomycin. So it is a very complicated structure where you have the amino groups containing structure also, and you have the amino sugar also. So you have linkage between them. Here is the sugar part, and here is the amino group, and it is linked to each other through this glycosidic linkage. So all of the examples are the same, very complicated structures. Streptomycin. These are the other examples: amikacin, tobramycin, neomycin. I would suggest, as I'm showing them, take screenshots. You all can note down the structures later because they are very big. We will move on to the mechanism of action. So you could note about streptomycin. You can see the structure of streptomycin in your on your screen, and then these are the other examples of aminoglycoside antibiotics: neomycin, amikacin, and tobramycin. If you have seen patients in hospitals, amikacin is a very common aminoglycoside which is given intravenously to combat different types of infections. Okay, now the mechanism of action of these aminoglycosides is not at all related to penicillins. The MOA is completely different. They attack what are called as the 30S ribosomal subunit. Okay, now when the protein synthesis has to happen, there is a series of reactions that happen. There is DNA, there is RNA, and then there is protein synthesis, or there is only RNA, like in the case of COVID. There is only, it is mRNA virus, so there is only RNA, and then there is protein synthesis directly. Now when the protein synthesis happens, after the protein synthesis happens, the microorganism bursts open, and these protein substances from the microorganism are released into the system of the person who is suffering from that disease. So they are toxic substances, they are toxic proteins, and they reach out to the different parts of your body, and whatever vomiting, diarrhea, the fever, and difficulty in breathing, or burning sensation in the urinary tract, whatever you see, the redness, all of this is caused because of this particular proteins that are being synthesized. These are toxic proteins that are synthesized. Now what aminoglycoside antibiotics are going to do is they are going to act as inhibitors for protein synthesis. They will not allow the process of protein synthesis itself to begin. The 30S ribosomal subunit, they will go and bind to it. There are two units that are present when protein synthesis has to happen. One is the 30S ribosomal subunit, the other is the 50S ribosomal subunit. Both are essential for protein synthesis to happen. So what the aminoglycoside antibiotics do is they bind to the 30S ribosomal subunit and inhibit the or prevent the initiation of protein synthesis. They also damage the bacterial cell membrane, and they cause the leakage of all the proteins and the cell organelles outside, thus having uh, a toxic effect on the microorganism. Okay, so you can note down the mechanism of action of aminoglycosides. The transported aminoglycosides act on the transported aminoglycosides act on the bacterial 30S 30 number 30 30 and write S 30S ribosomal, ribosomal, ribosomal subunit. The transported aminoglycosides act on bacterial 30S ribosomal subunit and distort mRNA translation thereby preventing initiation of protein synthesis, thereby preventing initiation of protein synthesis. They also combine with the next point in mechanism of action. They also combine with the anionic group membranes. They also combine with the anionic group membranes, thus causing damage to cell membrane, thus causing damage to bacterial cell membrane, thus causing damage to bacterial cell membrane, and leading to leakage, leakage, leading to leakage of proteins. And amino acids from the cell. They also block the production of Krebs cycle. You know the importance of Krebs cycle. They also block the production of Krebs cycle. Okay, there are a few SAR points that are based on the aminoglycoside structure. We shall note them down. First one, reduction of aldehyde group, reduction of aldehyde group to alcohol group gives a compound called as dihydrostreptomycin, which has similar activity, oxidation of aldehydes to oximes or semicarbazones, gives inactive analogues, Next point, modification of amino methyl group and replacing it with a large alkyl group. Replacing it with a large alkyl group decreases activity. Decreases activity. The guanidino group is essential for activity and should not be replaced. The guanidino group is essential for activity. If you see your screen, on the screen you can see the streptidin part of streptomycin. This is the guanidino group. The guanidino group is essential for activity in streptomycin and it should not be replaced. Okay, so this is all about aminoglycoside antibiotics. We have done the structures also which are there in your syllabus, streptomycin and neomycin, and I've given you two more additional compounds, amikacin and tobramycin. See that you update your notes with the uses of all these aminoglycoside antibiotics. You can refer to your pharmacology textbook. You can refer to Wilson Giswald also. You will find the the uses of these compounds there also. Okay, so with this we have completed another class of antibiotics. We have finished the first class, that is the beta-lactam antibiotics. The next class that we have completed today along with beta-lactam antibiotics is the aminoglycoside antibiotics. Next class tomorrow we will see the tetracycline antibiotics and some miscellaneous group of compounds, macrolide antibiotics and other miscellaneous compounds which are also used in the treatment of different types of infectious diseases. Are there any questions?